The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. I almost ignored it. My family rarely called me that late unless something was wrong, and after years of being treated like the responsible one, I had learned that their emergencies somehow always became my problems. But when I saw my mother's name flashing across the screen, I answered, "Mom." Her voice was trembling. "Where are you at home? Why you need to come over right now?" Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. What happened there was a long silence. Then she whispered, "Your sister was in an accident." I sat upright as she hurt. Oh, the answer came too quickly. "She's not hurt," Mom repeated. "But there's a serious problem." 20 minutes later, I walked into my parents' living room and immediately noticed the fear on everyone's faces. My father stood near the window. My mother was pacing, and my younger sister, Emily, sat on the couch with her face buried in her hands. "What happened?" I asked. Nobody answered finally. Dad said Emily was driving home tonight. I looked at my sister. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "She hit someone," Mom said. My heart stopped. "Is the person alive?" "Yes," Dad said quickly. "But they were injured." I stared at Emily. "Emily, what happened?" She started crying. I panicked. Those two words explained everything. She had been driving home after a party when she apparently struck a pedestrian crossing the road. Instead of stopping, she drove away. A hit and run. I felt sick. "Did you call the police?" Nobody spoke. Then Dad said something I will never forget. "We need you to take responsibility." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood him. "What, you heard me? You want me to say I was driving?" Dad nodded. Mom immediately added it was an accident. "Emily didn't mean to hurt anyone." I looked at my sister. "You left the scene." "I was scared," Emily sobbed. "You could have killed someone." I know. She covered her face. Dad stepped closer. "You're older. You're more stable. You don't have a record. If you take the blame, Emily might get probation." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're asking me to confess to a crime I didn't commit. It would save your sister." "No, it would destroy my life." Mom grabbed my arm. "Please. We're family." I pulled away. "You only remember we're family when you need something from me." The room went silent for years. My family had treated Emily like she could do no wrong. If she missed school, they made excuses. If she lost a job, they blamed her boss. If she made reckless decisions, someone else cleaned up the mess. And somehow that person was always me. But this time was different. This time someone's life had been changed. And my family wanted me to become a criminal to protect the person responsible. Dad's voice became colder. "If you don't help your sister, don't expect this family to forgive you." I looked at him. "You're threatening me." "I'm telling you what family does." I almost laughed. "No. Family doesn't ask you to destroy your future so someone else can escape the consequences of their actions." I walked toward the door. Mom started crying. "Where are you going? To the police?" Everyone froze. Emily jumped to her feet. "No," I turned around. "Then tell the truth." She stared at me. "I can't." "You can. I'll go to prison maybe." "Maybe not, but that's for the court to decide." Dad stepped in front of the door. "You're not doing this." I looked at him calmly. "You don't get to decide that." Then I said the words they never expected to hear. "Because tomorrow morning I will be sitting in court." Dad frowned. "What does that mean?" I took a breath. "It means I won't be taking the blame." Mom stared at me. "Then what are you going to do?" I looked directly at my sister. "I'm going to tell the truth." What they didn't know was that I wasn't just any person walking into court. For the last 6 years, I had been a judge. My family knew I worked in the legal system, but they had no idea what my exact position was. I had intentionally kept my professional life private. I never discussed cases at family dinners. I never wore anything that announced my profession. They knew I was successful. They knew I had a law degree, but they didn't know that every morning I entered a courtroom and sat behind the bench. I hadn't told them because I wanted to be treated like their daughter, not like someone important. Ironically, that decision had made it easier for them to believe I could be sacrificed the next morning. The police contacted me. I gave them the complete truth. I told them exactly what Emily had admitted. I handed over the messages she had sent me that night. I explained that I had never driven her car. And then I gave them something even more important. The truth about where I had been when the accident happened. Security footage from my apartment building confirmed it. My car had never left the parking garage. Emily's vehicle, however, was captured on multiple cameras. The investigation moved quickly. Within days, detectives had enough evidence to identify Emily as the driver. The injured pedestrian survived, but suffered serious injuries. When I visited the hospital, I met him for the first time. His name was Daniel. He looked at me with tired eyes. I don't understand why someone would leave me there. He said I couldn't tell him everything. But I told him one thing: you deserved better. A few weeks later, Emily's case reached court. I had absolutely no involvement in the proceedings. I recused myself because of the family connection. Another judge handled the case. Emily eventually admitted what she had done. She hadn't intended to hurt anyone, but fear had caused her to make one terrible decision after another. She accepted responsibility, and my family finally had to face reality for the first time. Dad didn't defend her, Mom didn't make excuses. They couldn't. The evidence was undeniable. Emily received a sentence that included probation, community service restitution, and mandatory driving-related programs. She didn't go to prison, but she had to live with what she had done. Months later, she came to my house. She looked completely different, not physically, emotionally. She stood on my doorstep for nearly a minute before speaking. "I hated you," she said. I didn't respond. "I thought you betrayed me." "You asked me to lie, I know." She looked down. "Now I understand." I stepped aside and let her enter. She sat at my kitchen table. I was so sure everyone would protect me. She whispered, "Mom and Dad always did." And this time they couldn't. I sat across from her. "You weren't protected by the truth before. You were protected from consequences." She nodded. "I know." Then she started crying. "I could have killed someone, yes. I don't know how I'll forgive myself." "You don't have to forgive yourself yet." She looked up. "What do I do then?" "Take responsibility, make things right where you can. And spend the rest of your life becoming someone who wouldn't make that decision again." She nodded slowly. That was the last time we discussed the case. My relationship with my parents changed. For months. Dad barely spoke to me. Mom called occasionally. But our conversations were different. There was no more guilt, no more demands. No more "but we're family eventually." Dad came to my office. He stood outside my chambers for several minutes before entering. "I was wrong," he said. I looked at him. He continued. "I thought being a father meant protecting my daughter." "It does, but I confused protection with hiding the truth." I didn't say anything. He sat down. "I almost asked you to destroy your own life." "Yes, I don't know how to make that right." "You can't." He looked hurt. "But you can make sure you never do it again." He nodded, and that was enough. The strangest part of the whole experience wasn't discovering that my family had been willing to sacrifice me. It was realizing that they had never understood who I really was. They thought I was the quiet daughter, the dependable daughter, the one who would always fix everything. They never imagined that the person they were asking to take the blame was someone who had spent years learning exactly what justice meant. But being a judge taught me something important. Justice isn't about punishing people because they made mistakes. It's about making sure the truth has a chance to exist. Emily made a terrible choice that night. My family made another terrible choice when they tried to hide it. And I made the only choice I could live with. I told the truth not because I was a judge, not because I knew the law, not because I wanted revenge. I told the truth because someone was lying in a hospital bed, wondering why the person who hurt him had disappeared. And no family loyalty was worth asking an innocent person to carry someone else's crime. Years later, whenever someone asks me what the hardest part of being a judge is, I don't talk about difficult cases. I tell them it's remembering that every case involves real people. People who make mistakes, people who are afraid, People who sometimes believe love means protecting the people they care about from consequences. But real love doesn't teach someone how to escape responsibility. Real love tells them to face what they've done, make amends, and become better. My family learned that lesson the hardest possible way, and I learned something too. Sometimes the person everyone expects to sacrifice themselves is the very person who finally has the courage to say no. This time the truth comes first.